We're here to celebrate the life of Margaret Kenning. Of course, I knew her as Mom. You knew her as Maggie. But a special few of you, one of you for sure, knew her as Margie. Mom's talents, hobbies, and occupations are almost too numerous to be believed. She was an elementary school teacher, a stay-at-home mom, a real estate agent, a fashion model, a fashion coordinator at DeYoung department store, a producer and on-air talent of commercials and fashion news segments. She was the travel director for Marin's Travel Company. She was a master shade gardener, a talented artist, seamstress, and interior designer, and an amazing hostess and cook. She did all of this in addition to being a beloved wife, mother, sister, and friend. The fascinating thing is that she didn't just dabble in each of these pursuits, she mastered them. It is hard not to marvel at the self-confidence and hard work she devoted to developing these skills. I think we have young Margie to thank for laying the foundation for many of Mom's later accomplishments. Margie, the youngest of 3 children from a blue-collar family in Pacific, Missouri. Margie watched her mom and dad tend extensive vegetable gardens every year and can the produce. Maggie had the most beautiful shade garden in the city, with over 20 varieties of pastas, and was featured in the 2009 Garden Walk. Indeed, Maggie was happy spending the day outside working in the yard. Margie accompanied her mother to the feed store so she could select the flatbread chicken feed sacks with the prettiest patterns, which would be transformed by her mother into dresses which she proudly wore to school. Maggie was an excellent seamstress who frequently made or embellished her own clothes. The girl who wore flower sack dresses to school became the fashion coordinator for the largest department store in town and represented that store on television commercials and news segments, which she wrote and produced. Elementary school age Margie celebrated the addition of an indoor bathroom to her childhood home. High school Margie moved with her mom and dad to the farm and lived in a broken down old farmhouse that again didn't have indoor plumbing. Maggie was a tasteful interior designer. The contents of each room of her home carefully curated and frequently updated. Even the bookshelves were rotated every few months to match the color of the season. Margie played volleyball and softball in high school. Maggie was an avid tennis player and eventually a very competitive pickleball player. Margie grew up in a home with working class parents where money was always a concern, but the children never felt poor. Maggie was frugal and never wasted. Ziploc bags were washed and reused, and old appliances, cabinets, and even carpets were resold rather than discarded. This is a true story. A few weeks ago, I took Mom to Crumble. And you know, Crumble is like an ice cream store, only instead of selling ice cream, they sell cookies. Gigantic, delicious cookies, which not surprisingly cost about $3.50. Mom was genuinely horrified that I would pay $3.50 for a cookie when equally delicious cookies could be made at home for a fraction of the price. I'm guessing she retold that story to several people. As the youngest of 3 children, Margie was the baby of the family and accustomed to being the center of attention. Maggie, likewise, enjoyed being the life of the party. Although we can thank Margie and her parents for many of Maggie's talents, some were uniquely her own, and others were shared with my dad. Mom and Dad were a perfect partnership, each bringing out the best in each other. Neither Mom or Dad had ever been exposed to the white-collar corporate world in which Dad worked. Mom wasn't just Dad's professional cheerleader, she was his coach and confidant. Together with Dad, they developed a love of travel, adventuring all over the world with friends and itineraries that left plenty of room for improvisation. She and Dad even turned their love of travel into jobs as travel directors. Her mastery of art as an adult, especially oil and watercolors, will provide the most tangible reminder of her skill and creativity. To say she was prolific was an understatement. She painted hundreds of wine glasses, tens of floral canvases, and an equal number of holiday pillows and decorations. The program that you have today, the poppies on the front and the daisies inside, that's an example of Mom's artwork. You might be wondering, how is it possible for one person to accomplish so much? This is the answer. This is the real secret to Mom's success. The daily to-do list on a yellow legal pad. Each morning as Mom poured gasoline on her cornflakes, she'd list her tasks for the day and would hopefully include a few tasks for Lori, Dad, and myself. The yellow legal pad to-do list was sacrosanct. She never skipped a day and only stopped when she was too weak to hold a pencil. All of these accomplishments are even more impressive in the context of her battle with breast cancer. The lumpectomy and radiation she endured 20 years ago only postponed the stage 4 cancer, which she fought the last 8 years of her life. Her lifelong athleticism allowed her to endure more chemotherapy than her doctor could recall giving any other patient. Despite the grim reality of stage 4 metastasized breast cancer diagnosis, she never gave up, often going directly to the gym after receiving a chemotherapy infusion because she knew she would feel too weak the next day. Even after COVID had sent her to the hospital a few weeks ago and she was greatly weakened, she was determined to recover, insisting that I help her walk laps around the living room to improve her stamina and asking Lori to schedule a get-together with Mom's friends. She wasn't afraid of death, but she loved life. She loved accomplishing and creating and laughing with all of us. And that is the memory I'd like you most to take from Mom, her laugh. Her laugh was as unique and joyful as she was. Remember her laugh and know that she loved all of us most of all. Thank you. There's a reception at BCC, and we'd be pleased and honored if you join us following the service.